What's up, y'all? We are live once again, Miscellaneous and Brown, and I'm Eric Esteban, your host. And we've got a very special guest, Mr. Robbie Abelon. And I just want to get this party started because we've been fighting the internet gods and trying to get this interview going, because just from reading your bio, dude, you're such an interesting man that has done so many things almost behind the scenes. You're the guy you're in the room where it happens, but you were the guy who was able to make it happen. You know what I'm saying? But you weren't the guy who took credit for it, which is all is seldom heralded, but it's definitely respected as far as as far as I go, because you guys are the guys that make it happen. You guys are really the guys behind the scenes. You're part of creating legislative things that actually change people's lives in a substantial way, whether it's voting rights or all these other. I mean, you've worked with every California politician and helped every other Filipino American person in politics in California. Your name opens so many doors by just, Robbie. Oh my God, Robbie. Oh my God. So I wanted to get to know the guy behind that, the guy how did that start? Tell me a little bit about you. This is our first meeting, so it's kind of I'm just honored to meet you and have you on as a guest on the podcast.
No, what's up, Eric? And thank you again for having me on here. Excited. I know you said the internet gods wouldn't allow this to happen, but we're here. We're doing it. So pleasure to be here. No, I think it's kind of where I started was I'm a son of immigrants from the Philippines. My parents, both of them, flew into Chicago, and that's where they settled when they first got here to America. Both were nurses, came here to work as nurses out of college, and then they had me in Chicago. And so that's where I got my starts, or where I was born, and then where my parents started their career in America. Lived in Oak Park, but they worked in Chicago. And then winter happens.
I was born in Oak Park. We shared this when we first met each other, but I want to acknowledge the coincidence, and there's no coincidences in life. So we're brothers from the start already. You were born in the same place that I was born, and was for the first year. Even if you had to move, I'm cool.
Maybe we did meet back then. I don't know. Maybe cross paths or something. Or my parents walked a stroller next to your house or something. Who knows?
Or maybe you went to a Santo Niño at my house. Who knows?
Something like that. Yeah. So then
go ahead. Keep going.
Oh yeah, and then my parents then we moved to Florida for a little bit, and then we have a lot of family on both sides in Northern California, and that's where I've settled and been the rest of my life has been in Northern California since probably 3 years old and on.
Right on. And so, I mean, rather than read your resume, I almost want to kind of just, how did you get into politics? What made you, and then now you're now working for Adobe, correct?
Yeah, I'm finished up my time over at Adobe doing their state and local gov relations. But yeah, if you want to talk about kind of very beginning, I want to say my family was really.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Because I was just going to say, because my podcast is really about people like you who may not want to run for office necessarily, but they want to be involved. They want to get involved. They want to, be a part of what the things that you're a part of. So for me, when you share your story, you almost inspire other people's to duplicate it. So that's part of why I ask you to share your origin story, almost like superheroes. Yeah. You know what I mean?
No, I think my origin story probably similar to a lot of people be listening to this podcast. My parents were Filipino immigrants, so I had the Filipino immigrant experience in my house while growing up here. So and them being nurses, so I did learn a lot about hospitals and healthcare system, the need for healthcare. So this would come into play as an adult of things when it comes to issues that I cared about. But these were formulated and started from the foundation of home, immigration rights, immigrant families, and what they went through. Identity politics, which plays a big role into what shaped my world now, but was starting and seeing it as a kid. just not knowing what it actually meant, but it became a big part of who I was. So things that I saw weren't directly political growing up, but they play a big part into how I see the world today and who I want to help. I didn't really start getting active until it was a very big fluke, actually a big accident. My mom said, "Robbie, you're going to get a job this summer. You're gonna work." So she had a couple applications for me to fill out. The standard teenage jobs like McDonald's or 7-Eleven or whatever. The standard jobs you're supposed to get. For you younger people, there's this thing called Blockbuster. So like, here's this Blockbuster application you need to fill out, or Hollywood Video.
Oh man, that was coveted. If you could work at Blockbuster back in the day, because you could bring movies home, that was the best.
I think that was the cool job. There's a hierarchy of cool high school jobs. I think Blockbuster, Hollywood Video was that. I'd say Starbucks or the frozen yogurt Cold Stone was like the second one for summertime.
You could hook your friends up.
Yeah. So did the standard thing of like looking to apply for that. But as I was cleaning up my room, I found this old civics book. It's like this 8th grade civics book. I was flipping through it. There's a little box that says, "Did you know high school students can work at the U.S. House of Representatives and Senate as congressional pages?" So it was like a little blurb, 2 sentences. I was like, "Oh, what is this?" So I just went online, Google searched it, applied to be a congressional page. I was the only one who applied in my district and then got in. And in a few months, I was on my way to Washington, D.C. to work with 65 other high school kids. I realized how out of the element I was. I really couldn't tell you the difference between a Democrat or Republican back then. But then my roommates were like the son of the Florida Republican Party. This other one is like an all-state pitcher from Ohio. And you just went down the line of who got there. Sons or daughters of members of Congress. One of them is a senator now. So they were all connected, or like one's a valedictorian for their school. Another one won a high school essay contest to get their person's nomination. And I realized, my story is I was just the only one who applied for my district and I got it. So I was like, I'll just stay quiet on how
you
I got
almost
here.
Were like the plot of Distinguished Gentlemen. Remember that Eddie Murphy movie?
Yeah, it was
where his name just fit the same dude and it just fit, and then they got elected. That's a trip. That's awesome. When you say a fluke, that is really a fluke.
It was a fluke. So I got there but that made me be probably the only one who didn't take anything for granted the entire time. I took advantage of everything there. Anything I went to, any discussion, I dived headfirst, and then made some really good friends. And I think the cool thing it proved to me that, hey, if I could hang with these 64 other students who are supposed to be the best and brightest. At first, I was like, I definitely don't belong here. And by the end, I was like, if I can hang with these people, I can definitely make a mark. And I got to see and meet a lot of people.
You can play basketball when Michael Jordan's on the court. You can hang with everybody, basically.
Yeah. So I learned
you're competing against the cream of the crop, right?
Exactly. So I got it, and a lot of them became really good friends. Stayed in touch with them. Some of them I still stay in touch with to this day from that high school group. And that's what sparked my interest. Being in DC, getting to meet with some people who are legends. So John Lewis, the legend himself, was there, and then a couple of members of Congress. Robert Matsui, who was a member of Congress from Sacramento, he passed away. But I got to see Asian Pacific Islanders as members of Congress, and I'm a firm believer if you see it, you can be it. So that was a big thing of like me being a 16, 17-year-old, being able to share the same elevator space as them, or be able to just chat with them on the House floor, because there's a lot of time. If anyone who watches C-SPAN and you think like, oh, there's some cool stuff happening. 90% of the time on the House floor, nothing's really happening. So people are just standing around. So I took a lot of time just to chat with members of Congress, and got to, really get to see it firsthand. And that's kind of the spark. And I've been running kind of full sprint ever since, in policy, in politics, and campaigns. But that's where I got my start, 16, 17 years old in DC, because my parents said, hey, you're gonna apply and get a job this summer. They didn't know what type of job I'd end up getting, but that's my start.
I was about to say you had me at John Lewis.
Yeah.
Because good trouble is literally the basis for any political thing I'm doing, really, because it really is about, finding out what you believe in, and in your case, getting to learn from the best. That is What was a breakdown? What was a conversation like? What was some of the conversations you shared with the great one?
Yeah, so with John Lewis, he was a guest speaker for our Congressional Page program. So we would huddle up in a classroom, and I think once, maybe twice a week, a member of Congress would come in and talk for a half hour with the 65 of us kids at the time. And everyone heard of Martin Luther King, but then when at 16 years old, some people may know a little bit more of history of the civil justice movement, some didn't. I think a lot of people will learn, unfortunately learn about it later in life, but around 16, it's kind of maybe half did, half didn't. But I think what came with him was this gravity with him, like whether students knew his past or not. He had this aura, kind of this command of respect in the room, no matter what. But in a way that wasn't scary or daunting. It was probably more intriguing, and he talked a little bit about his time in Congress and a little bit about his time when he was a student in college, where he was there, being a part of all the giants in the civil rights era, and how he became a part of it. But most of the time he started just asking us questions, for why are you here? What are you looking to do? And he was so polite. He was calling us 16, 17-year-olds, sirs and ma'ams in the middle of the conversation as well. But there was, I just do remember there's a heaviness, this gravity towards him just speaking, or even just how good of a listener he was. And he didn't really need to spend 30 minutes of his day to talk to kids like us, but he did. So I just remember people like John Lewis would continue to take the time to inspire the next generation and have dialogue. And we were split. I think I'd say more of us were more conservative compared to the liberals. So, most of the people came from Republican districts because there's more Republicans in the House at that time. So he was taking the time to have that dialogue with future generation, probably conservative leaders down the line, or people who are part of conservative leadership families. So he was there having that dialogue and discussion in a way that wasn't how, unfortunately, dialogue and discussions are today, where it's just one side screaming at the other. It was, let's have this discussion. So I really loved and will cherish that hour time with him in that classroom setting, and then being able to just have a 30-second minute high chat with him on the House floor at that time.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing for me to hear, because I was a political science major in college, so I've been a student of politics and people like John Lewis and the civil rights movement, even before I was in college, because it's what compelled me and propelled me to minor in it. I majored in English, so words mean a lot to me too. So, like you said, how his words had a level of gravity, probably his presence had a level of, I love the word gravitas, and yeah. I don't think it applies more to anyone else than somebody like John Lewis, who has not only the street cred, if you will, from being one of the first ones to cross that crazy bridge with all the police on it, the Edmund Pettus Bridge, to running for Congress and being part of Martin Luther King's and being there, all this stuff, all this history is just an amazing thing. And then for you to be able to share, and for him to, for the fact that, would you mind me sharing around what time this was? Like what year around?
This was 2002, 2003. So 20 and 21 years ago.
So, he was still an elderly man. He had no reason or need to reach out to you guys, but still found the time in his day, which is really our only luxury as human beings, right? Is time. So the fact that this guy gave you his time and was able to connect with these young people, like you said, and even kids who may not agree with him necessarily or know his story, that's amazing to me. He was preaching and teaching up until, all the way through, whenever opportunity he had. And that's amazing to me that you could share that story with us. So you're now a kid. You did your Congressional Page job. What happened after that? Now you've been inspired by all this. What happened after that?
Yeah, so I came back as a senior year to finish up my high school. I really wasn't on pace of like, or took my academics that seriously at all. Just to be very honest, I wasn't really a good student at all. Class, yeah.
Same.
So I'd say more people should be open about it. I'm not going to share like a fake story of like, yeah, I was a straight A student and I read every book and I did all my homework. No, that wasn't me. That the classroom setting just wasn't for me. So for me to think
part of the homogenous setting of a classroom setting makes it so that not everybody gets that same level of education, because not everybody learns the same.
It's a cookie cutter setting, especially at that time. I think we're now more open of like different ways and exploring different ways how students learn. People might be more audio, more people might be classroom settings, might be more visual, might be more reading, might be more, maybe a YouTube video is better for them. But those weren't real avenues that were available to probably you and me growing up in as kids, which maybe I might have had a different experience or performed better or been better versus here's just one way how we're going to teach millions of other students the same exact way. But so that really wasn't for me. So I just came back and then actually had a heavy discussion with myself and thought, I'll go ahead and go apply to college. Ended up going to Sacramento State, so our capital here in California. And I started up the College Democrats at Sacramento State, and it happened to coincide with a presidential election. So another thing about being right time, right place, Senator Barbara Boxer was going to announce her re-election on campus. I just happened to submit to create a new campus club, the Sacramento College Democrats, like the week before. The only people who were like signed it were like my roommates at college, and I just walked up and down the dorm like, hey, I need 10 other students to be a real club. So they weren't like real members. They were just people who signed a piece of paper. So then I get a call from their office saying, hey, Senator Barbara Boxer is looking to launch her re-election campaign on campus to focus on higher ed. We need a club to sponsor it. We see that you're president of the Sacramento State College Democrats. Can you sponsor it? I was like, sure. I don't know what that means, but yeah. And then later on down the line, it's like, she needs an introductory student speaker. Can you be the introductory speaker? I was like, sure. I don't know what that means. So fast forward like a week later, I went from having this fake club I just started not knowing what to do with it to introducing Senator Barbara Boxer for her re-election. And then we passed around a clipboard for people to sign up to be a part of that club. So I went from like maybe this club, fake club, maybe not a real club, to 300 people with emails that I emailed out. And that was my first real thing. So back to back, lightning striking twice, right place, right time. And I think from that,
I think that it might not be lightning now. It might be the universe telling you, yo, homie, this is where you're supposed to be at. Right here.
Possibly.
Right here. Stay right here, homie.
stay right here. So it worked, and it launched me to join, to have launched, and we became like, I think the largest college democratic chapter in the state, basically overnight, having 300 people as our members, and we grew. And then we just had guest speakers that that later on became like assembly members and legislators down the line, or became mayors. And then those people who were in that club, a lot of them also launched their career into public policy. So it was an exciting time and momentous time. So those are two momentous things that kind of launched me into there. And then from college, did a lot of campaigns, and worked my very first my very first full-time job was to be campaign manager for Christopher Cabaldon. I don't know if you know him. So he was,
I don't think I've met him yet. No.
Yeah. So Filipino, he was West Sacramento mayor and was running for assembly. So this was before Rob Bonta. So in 2008, so we were trying to elect the first Filipino into the state assembly at that time, was Christopher Cabaldon. Unfortunately, we came up short, but I think it helped pave the way for other Filipinos to run in the legislature. And it just boggled my mind in 2008, we still did not have a Filipino in the legislature. And it took until I think 2012 for Rob Bonta and I think later Todd Gloria to make an assembly. But we still haven't had a Filipina. So Jessica Caloza, we're hoping might be her
soon. I had Jessica Caloza on the other day. So and I also had and I'm going to be hosting an event for Isabel Jurado.
Oh, perfect.
So I'm really excited about all the Filipinas that are now throwing their hat in the ring and they're brilliant voices because their perspective is different from ours. You know, it's just because I'm a dad of daughters, so I've come to not even like almost step back a little bit because I know that our masculine voices have had the platform for a long time. So if not to just, I mean, and I'm not trying to defer. I'm married, happily married. I'm not trying to get nobody's lady. I'm being real. Like I want to empower my daughters to feel that they could do the same things that I could do. So in that way, I love the fact that there's Filipinas running for office here in California, and I'm involved, and they can meet them and shake their hand, and they're real people. You know, it's a really cool thing, and it means a lot. Like you said, if you can see it, you can do it.
Yeah,
because representation really does matter. I mean, that really is a thing. Even, I mean, I didn't even see it in my own self coming up as an actor. You don't see Filipinos on TV when we were coming up, but I associated with my heroes, the people that I grew up watching and idolizing, Eddie Murphy, and you know, all these people that ended up becoming who they became. But they also, I was watching this interview with Eddie Murphy. I think it was with Jay Leno, and he was defending Boomerang, the movie, because they were talking about how it doesn't really make sense and la la la. And then he said, hey, yo, it's just a movie about an office full of black people, and you all are just wondering where all the white people are. And it's just that, you know, there's an office where sometimes there's black people, and it's just, and we're all just doing the same things that all the other humans do. And that when I heard him say that, that was kind of my goal for my art for Filipinos and Filipino Americans. And so that's part of why I have this podcast now, because I love politics, but I also love, you know, like you said, now here's this cat. Hopefully one day some kid, 17-year-old kid, he's like, oh, wait, you can apply to be a congressional page? What? You know, and maybe he does it, and then he gets that same lightning that you got, and then you're going to be here talking to this, you know, C-level comedian from the.
No. You're breaking barriers too. So no, that's no. I think it's very true. I think you hit it right at the point of like, you know, we have different perspectives too. We got to bring them to the table, and we got to lift those voices up so they're here too, so that it becomes the new norm, right? And once it's the new norm, then I wanted to make it so that there aren't any more Filipino firsts, right? We want to make sure that, you know, that's a thing that it's too normal. We want to make it a normal thing where Filipinos and Filipinas are at the table and making those decisions for us, where we don't even blink, where it's no longer a historic thing, that it's more of, oh, we have too many of us in this specific spot, right? Like that's what we want. We want to have that problem. So I think
also at least we're representative within the population that we live, because in a place like California, where, you know, you have the largest population of Filipino Americans and you don't have any in the legislature, that's not really, you know, you need to have some, just so there's, even if there's just one person, like, and now we have the Attorney General, which is a very different story, but you know, it's nice to see that. And I mean, I got to web StreamYard with Mr. Bonta a couple times, and it's just really cool, man, to be able to see, because growing up, again, we didn't see that growing up, and now to be able to be that example for the kids now watching these things, that's the point, I think, for both of us.
I think so. And I think, like, you could see it, you could be it, and he's there at Attorney General, but I'd say, you know, his family has had a historic impact in California. So I don't know if you even know his mom, Cynthia Bonta. So she's the one who's pulled me into a lot of Filipino American activism, still even to this day. So we still keep in touch and see each other. But what his family did the generation before in the farm worker movement for Filipinos and Latinos in the Central Valley is huge. You know, it's legendary for what they did. It caught the attentions of the Kennedys and Martin Luther King at the same time as civil rights were happening on the East Coast. It was happening, a version of it here, and his family was front and center on it. So I think Cynthia Bonta and many other Filipino American leaders helped shape and still have their effect today. So Rob comes of that cloth. cut from that cloth in that family. So very intriguing family perspective that he comes from.
It's a strong foundation, basically. And I think that's part of what I admire so much, being a Filipino who grew up in Chicago and didn't have the same type of, it was our small Filipino Santo Niño group and maybe some kainans here and there. But, the population of Filipinos in Illinois, especially during the 80s and 90s, was, maybe 50,000 people at the most. And they were all separated in different suburbs. So it was never a condensed community. And now, fast forward to today, the parish that I grew up in didn't know what I was, if I was a little black boy or a little Puerto Rican boy, and they were, I'm Filipino, and they're like, what's that? Now they have a Tagalog mass at the church.
Oh, that's huge.
And so even in my lifetime, you see progress. So and that's part of, like, when I study politics and when I analyze politics, I can see the progress even in my own lifetime. You can see the progress even in your own lifetime. Even if you were the only kid who was a Filipino page during your time, let's check the class of this year and see if there isn't, a few more this time. And it's, I remember because one of the comedians who inspired me to have a podcast was Mark Maron, when he had my political Jesus, Barack Obama, on in his garage. But Barack said that, this country is a big country and it moves like a battleship. If you change it or move it too drastically, it'll sink. It won't work. It'll sink. So you have to change it gradually. And so, one Filipino here, one Filipino there. When you look up 10 years from now, there's going to be 20 Filipinos. You never know. And that's kind of where I'm at with my art, with my craft, with podcasting, with sharing our stories. It's almost just being consistent. And so I kind of want to ask you, and what do you think going forward as Filipino Americans in this new kind of, a little bit contentious political climate? What can we do as Filipino Americans to increase our representation, increase our voice? People who are listening, who, they want to get involved, whether it's on the Democratic side or the Republican side, however it is, be fair. But at the same time, how can we advance our interests and issues as Filipino Americans?
I think probably three things. So one of them is today, so many people can utilize so many different platforms. I think encouraging people to find their voice and let other people hear it and share it with the world. So it could be a platform like a podcast. It could be maybe you start up your own group, kind of like I did. I created my own College Democrats chapter, but to have an area, a space where people can go and have a discussion and chat. I think allowing people to have dialogue and discussions, I think is more, having more spaces, having more options will allow more people to kind of find their own voice in many ways. So I think that's one. And then two, we've kind of had the theme of today is you can see it, you can be it. So having people run or not necessarily have to be the candidates, but even campaigns that have campaign managers that are Filipino, that understand the Filipino immigrant experience or the intersectionality of stuff. So maybe a Filipino voice or Filipino female voice or the LGBT voice or of rural versus urban voices. So these are things that if you can see it, you could be it, having them in areas of leadership. So that's two. And then three, I think something that's gotten away from us, and I might have mentioned it earlier, is try to have conversations or encourage to have conversations with people you don't agree with, just to see where they're coming from. Because who knows, you might be able to find some common ground. And I think I'm a firm believer. I have a lot of friends who are Republicans. We don't agree on a lot of things that are hot button issues, but when we start talking about some of the same things, we agree about a lot of stuff that you're not seeing on Fox News or MSNBC. We agree on, we all want to have high quality education. We all want high quality jobs. We all want to have success for our families. The list goes on and on. We want clean water when we open up the tap. We want to have the ability to have affordable homes for everyone. So it's just how you get there is probably what differentiates us, but the goal is.
But we've
is the
stopped
same.
talking about the how,
That's
and we're just talking about the what we want rather than how we get there. And I think the more conversations we have about how we get there, rather than who gets the credit for it, or whatever ideology was the one that won out. That's where I think where I'm at now with it is. I'm kind of tired of both sidesism, and let's work together to try and make this a better place. That's kind of where I'm at with it.
And probably, I know I said 3 things. The 4th bonus one, which I'm going to say is the most important thing. Fourth bonus one, actually, I should move number 4 to number 1. So the actual real number 1 is open up the door for those who come after you. So I'm a big believer of mentorship. I'm a big believer of people help me. Obviously, you've heard my story when I was 17 on the way on to today. I don't get to where I am without people helping me out and telling me, showing me the ropes, opening a door, inviting me to come to this thing, or, hey, I want you to meet this person, or just being real with me. Like, hey, I think you're doing too much on this stuff. You got to tone it down and try to do this. Like people telling you what you need to hear versus what you want to hear. Be that for someone too. Obviously, we all need someone to be that for us, but sometimes we forget we need to be that for those who come after us too. So that is
when you said to move it to number 1, I say it again, because that is correct. Yeah. Make sure that door is open for the people to follow, because that's the most important part of this whole thing is, leaving this world better than you found it, and contributing as much as you can to the betterment of, whatever you can affect. So yeah, man, I really appreciate that answer, because it is really true. And I try to, that's a goal for this podcast. That's a goal for my comedy. One of my goals whenever I go home to Chicago is to take the, 3 to 5 best Filipino American comedians in Chicago and have them feature for me. So, and it helps sell tickets, but it also gives them a chance to showcase and get filmed, and, how all the production goes. So that's what it's all about, really, is because you wouldn't be involved in civic duty and community advocacy if you didn't want a better day for the people to follow you.
Yeah. And the other thing too, it sounds so unselfish. There's a selfish component too. The amount that I learn from the people who are younger than me, I learn a lot as well. So they're always constantly shaping, my thoughts and what I think, I think generations that come after us are going to be smarter than us as well. Like just the amount of access to knowledge that they have and how in tune they are to just immediately pull up knowledge and bank it in their brain. They're quicker than I'll ever be, or than I ever was. So being around,
they've had this in their hand their whole lives, guys. They've had the world's information and whatever question they wanted in their hand their whole life. This generation Alpha, I'm scared of these kids. These kids are smart, and they're not spoiled because they had to go through the pandemic. So my kids, even if I wanted to spoil them, I couldn't, because for 2 years the whole country was turned off and you couldn't get what you wanted. You had to make do with what you had. So this new generation is a different generation than even the one that was right before it, because of the pandemic and the things that they had to evolve and adapt to. So I'm scared of this new generation. I feel like this generation, my kids better be the ones to get it right, because golly, I'm Generation X. I'm just glad we gave them hip hop and grunge.
I know, and that's a big part of my daily life too. Anyway, to this day. No, but I think every generation has a different voice and they have a different perspective. And I try to be the more optimistic of every generation after us, because I think it's easy to be like, oh, the generation, they got to learn a lot. I'm saying they probably have seen a lot, and they're ready to speak their mind pretty soon. And we got to encourage that. So that's huge, versus telling them that, hey, wait your time until you get to us. No, I think we're at a point where people are able to formulate and start thinking for themselves earlier than ever before. Obviously we got to make sure that they're not misguided. We got to guide them along the way, but I'm a firm believer that this upcoming generations after us they're going to be quick, they're going to be smart, and they're going to do a lot of cool things for us as well. So
I hope so, because man, I'm getting old. I just hope that they enjoy my comedy, and I can still make them laugh. And that's, like you said, man, that's part of what keeps you current. If you want to be part of the vibe of the society, you want to be an involved citizen in democracy. When it really boils down to it, you have to speak to the youth. You have to speak to the what the kids are talking about. And then, so with that said, I mean, we're coming up on time here, and I don't want to take any more of your time. Thank you again, Robbie, for spending your time sharing your story. But since this is what the kids are talking about nowadays, are you a hip hop fan? Do you listen to hip hop? So okay,
I am.
So let's finish this wonderful current event discussion and space of political whatever we're talking about here at Miscellaneous and Brown. And I want to ask you, Kendrick or Drake?
Ooh, so I have a interesting take on it. So for me, I love the art of Kendrick. So I think he's a more pure artist. I think he's like the only. He's a Pulitzer Prize, right? He's like Pulitzer Prize winner for his writing, for his for being a lyricist. So I value him as an artist. I value him and his thought process and how he brings to the table. I think Drake is more mainstream. I know people just make fun of that word mainstream, but I think he is a more successful artist, dollars and cents wise, and selling, right? Probably a bigger platform, bigger people. And every time whenever I see a dance floor, whether at a wedding or at a club or whatever, whenever DJ throws on a Drake song, more people are up there dancing. And some throw a Kendrick Lamar song, probably less people are, but I think more people are more in tune with the Kendrick song. You know what I mean?
I feel you. I feel you on that.
So but the actual answer for me, I'm more on the Kendrick side of it. I think he is pretty thoughtful in how he puts together and even crafts his message. That's something that I respect. Down the line, like, will we probably forget why they're beefing or how long beef, and we'll probably just forget some of the probably misses of songs. There's gonna be some songs that there's gonna be misses, right? Or some lyrics that are gonna be misses. But I think Kendrick's hit harder or hit stronger or more thought out. But I think we might be still in the middle. We probably have a long time to go before this is finished. But I just hope it finishes quicker than last longer, so that beefs have their need, I guess, in hip hop or have their place. But I just don't want it to fill all of hip hop. I think there's a lot more other stuff for us to listen and explore.
For sure.
Let them battle out.
Like Dua Lipa,
another month.
I had a real nice album come out during that whole beef, and I listened to it with my kids. I was like, oh, I should have been listening to some Dua Lipa.
Yeah. So what I want it to be a part of their timeline. I don't want it to be from now to 2035. It's just going to be a Kendrick Drake thing I don't think
it's going to be. Because see, I'm kind of a hip hop head, and also I've been obsessed with this stuff for about a week. And why I made it my last question, because I wanted to talk to him about it.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. What are you?
For real, it's interesting for me because I'm very, very much like the stuff that Kendrick was rapping about, where he talks about how Drake is a culture vulture, and how Drake goes to one part of town in Atlanta and gets one sound from another rapper and another rapper, and he's always on the hot sound, which is like you said, he's a great mainstream pop song type of rapper, where Kendrick is more about the art. Right. And so part of what and this is just me, it's a very interesting cultural shift in what maybe mainstream hip hop wants, because maybe they're tired of this, latching on guy who's not necessarily an art. He's kind of almost an artificial, almost Elvis like type figure that has taken everyone's sound and made everybody around him famous, but has also kind of been a little bit of a jerk as he was doing it. And now he's got his comeuppance with Kendrick, a real artist who is now, got a summer song on him where it talks about him being a, PDF file, which is crazy. But also, if those are true, I mean, like, We see what's going on with Puffy right now, and we see what's going on with what happened with Weinstein and Epstein, and how these powerful men and all these unfortunate, scary, secret organizations are coming down. It's a little weird to me, only because, and I'll discuss this with you only because you're a political guy and you can kind of understand my analogy when I get to this. Like, all that QAnon stuff that was going on in 2021, and all the stuff with the child and the guy who shot up the pizza stuff and all this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, all that stuff. And I'm not saying that QAnon had any validity, because he was just throwing everybody in there. It's like all of Hollywood and all of the Democrats. So it was a different type of conspiracy. But now when all this stuff comes out about Puffy, and all the stuff that comes out about, maybe becoming out about Drake, or becoming out about, and Epstein and all these other guys, it starts to make you wonder about these weird conspiracies, bro.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one, I hope it's not true, but I mean, just one of two things. One, I hope it's not true and clears the air and it's not true. But two, if it's, I think, bringing light to things, if things are happening that shouldn't be happening, and bringing light to it is needed. So unfortunately, in the celebrity world, it happens decades too late in many cases. So with John Diddy Combs, or Puff Daddy, P Diddy, whatever name we're calling him today, and, Epstein for decades as well. So a lot of these, Cosby is another example, for decades, Harvey Weinstein for decades.
Oh man,
it takes a long time for it to happen. In the meantime, before it comes out to light, there's a lot of victims. So whether what's happening here is the same exact thing, I hope it's not, but that's,
you hope for the best, man. You always hope for the best, for sure. But if what the unfortunate thing is, usually where there's smoke, there's usually fire. That's but everybody's innocent until proven guilty. So, but at the same time, it's a little weird. It's a little weird, and it's kind of scary. But I don't want to end it on this note now. No. I thought we were going to end it on a good note, and end up talking about stupid Drake creepy stuff. Yeah. No, but here's what I'll say. What are your predictions for 2020, for the November election? Like, I know everybody's there's a sense of apathy right now at the beginning of the country. They just announced that they're going to do a debate. What do you think? What are your prognostications for this November election?
Yeah,
then I'll take the climate.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I'm not going to take the easy way out, which is like, oh, it's too early to tell. I'm not going to not give you an actual answer. I'm going to tell you kind of what I see and think now. Sure. And then we could probably reevaluate a couple of months and see where we're going. I think both Trump and Biden's vice presidential choices are going to play a huge role, probably bigger role than probably any VP candidate selection in the past, mostly because flash forward 4 years from now, 2028, whether Trump will stay on because of his age or his criminal stuff that's happening, his VP may need to step in, right? So, and then with Biden, age is a factor. Hopefully he wins and can fulfill his full 4 years, but it is a reality that it's a non-zero chance the vice president will have to step in on either case. So whoever Trump picks, and if Kamala Harris starts getting some of her, stepping into the spotlight herself, because I think it's too easy for vice presidents to not get that spotlight. All the spotlight and shine is supposed to be on the presidential candidates. So I think it should be smarter for both Trump and for Biden to be very thoughtful on how and what platforms they give their VP candidates. So I'm interested to see who Trump picks. If he's going to pick another person who's going to be just like him, or someone that might spark a new constituency. So that's something I'm interested to see where he goes. So that's one take on it. Two, I think you were right. The apathy right now is tough to tell. So we might have a lower presidential turnout than maybe in 24 years or so, maybe 1996 type 2000 level. Maybe we'll have low turnouts like that. Maybe. But
don't say 2000.
2000 was, Gore Bush. It was kind of low turn.
The bad one, man.
Yeah.
Whoa, dude.
But I also wanted to point how close it was. Like everyone look up that election. So it was kind of a low turnout, a little bit apathetic. A lot of people thinking, why should I pick? What's the difference between Gore and Bush from an outside?
Such a big difference.
What's the difference? That's not going to make a difference. But the actual reality is that election was incredibly close, and we didn't know about it until weeks afterwards, and took the Supreme Court to stop a recount for that, which just means how important voting is and how important everyone's voice is even back then. So I think it's still going to be very important 2024. Everything's going to hinge to just a few thousand votes here, a few thousand votes there. And I think communities are whether communities come out like the Filipino community or the immigrant community or you name a community, a lot of by someone not showing up or by someone showing up could sway who goes. And I think VP selections from both candidates should be considered and weighed heavier than any other time before. So those are my two things that I bring it up for this election.
No, those are very astute. So who would be your let's say, give me your two top selections for Trump's VP? If you were running his campaign, who would you choose?
Oh man, if I were him, I would pick either someone who was much younger and from a swing state, or a diversity. Go with someone who is Latino, or to go someone who's someone from the Black community. If I were him, so like a Tim Scott from South Carolina, or I was going to say that South Dakota
Kristi Noem.
But her stuff just popped up recently, and there's a lot of dog owners.
I want to thank Kristi Noem seriously right here on this Filipino American podcast, because ain't nobody talking about Filipinos eating dogs no more. Kristi Noem, no more. Yeah. So you can have all of that dog mess now. You have all that beating up dogs and being mean to dogs. Kristi Noem, you own all that. Filipinos, as a member of the Filipino delegation, Kristi Noem, you can have that.
You pass the baton to her on that one.
I'm passing it all to you, Kristi Noem.
So I was gonna say someone like her. So it could be someone like that. So that's who I would assume or think if he's gonna go a route that can expand kind of his base, or pick someone who's moderate, so who's not like super right wing, maybe someone who's moderate or middle of the road. But so that's where I am.
Person that would actually. The only moderate person who I feel like would have the cachet to be his vice president wouldn't do it. Yeah, I mean, I think the only moderate you could get that would actually maybe give him some is Romney, maybe.
Yeah, so it would be someone. I think that was a name I thought of, but he would probably say no. But someone like a Mitt Romney, who like, and then years before, like a John McCain type person who has more. Main Street bet, when he was live. Obviously, I think McCain would have probably said no. I assume Romney would probably say no today. But if you found someone in that role, because it's all about expanding your electorate. I think all the diehard Trumpers are going to vote for Trump no matter what. But that middle of the road person in Arizona or Georgia, or Michigan or Pennsylvania or Wisconsin, they may not like, hey, I don't know, I don't like Biden, I don't like Trump, but hey, this person could become president. Maybe this is the type of person. So that's what I am fearful that they'll try to explore. That they'll try to expand the voting pie and try to get someone. But most likely, he'll probably just pick someone who is just like him and will say and rubber stamp anything that he wants. That's my guess. But my worry is he finds someone who could expand it and help him win the election.
Yeah, my worry is Tim Scott.
Yeah.
Because it kind of negates the whole racist card. If you pick a guy who's, you pick an African American as your running mate, you can't really call him a racist anymore. But it's just that, anyway. But yeah. I love this, man. I love this. This is the first time on Miscellaneous and Brown we've had some political prognostications and some valid ones that nobody else on, even CNN don't got this stuff. And that Kristi Noem joke, bro, I got to thank you for that, because that was improvised with you and me just talking.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, man, that's a improv 1-2 combo on this one. So
and here's what I'm going to say. The last thing I want to tell you is I just want to ask you, how do you know our co-host Chris Mateo, who you're basically subbing for? I just wanted, because you wouldn't be here without him, so I wanted to give him a shout out, but also, share your story of how you met Chris and how you know Chris and
shout out to Chris Mateo. I think he's down for the count. He's sick or might have allergies. Something. It's no joke in Sacramento with allergies. But I've known Chris for a while now. I'd say 14, 15 years. I don't know the exact year. But there's, the Filipino community is both large and small at the same exact time in the Sacramento area, and particularly Northern California. And, we kind of have a generational divide in Sacramento. There's those who are now 70s and 80s who were kind of the leadership and still kind of make up the huge leadership, our aunties and titos up here in Sacramento. And then there's like this generational divide of when I was in my 20s, and Chris is a few years older, so I think he was in his maybe early 30s, where there was a small group of us who were trying to explore what we can do or like follow the lead that they're doing, but also put in our own twist on it so that we're a part of it. So Chris was in those circles and in those rooms at the time, along with his wife, Elaine, who is a leader in her own right in the Filipino community, has her own consulting for nonprofits too. So she's on the front lines with nonprofit and API communities here around Northern California. So I got to know him kind of through that route. He was head of, I think, PNDA, the Filipino National Day Association as well, and just was around a lot of the Filipino politicos and in the community. So that's how I got to know him. And then he got involved politically. So he started joining some campaigns, city council race, a state Senate race. So I got to know him through a lot of the campaign stuff. And, we were similar in age. And so I started inviting him to some stuff. He invited me to some stuff. So that's how we've kind of been friends and been around each other since then. And anything he calls me up for, texts me, if anything he needs help with, I'm there. And I feel like vice versa, anything I call him or text him, he's there. And we usually say yes before we let the other person finish the question. So that's how much I respect him and like him, because I don't think he'll ever put me in a bad situation. And I hope he feels the same way for me too.
Well, I hope you didn't feel like he put you in a bad situation.
No, it was great. No, I get to hang out with you too, and crack a few jokes, have some fun. So this is a great time. I'd love to.
Well, I'm glad, man. And Robbie, know that you can come back, because your insight and your perspective on things, as far as what we're going to be talking about, the current issues. Like I said, man, I watch a lot of news. I listen to a lot of podcasts about politics. And again, there's just a different inside baseball when you're trying to specifically gear your message to Filipino Americans. And I'm really happy and honored to have you on, man. And I'd love to have you on again anytime you're available.
Yeah, happy to do so. Well, Eric, hey, appreciate it. This is great. This was fun. Keep it going. And yeah, let's stay in touch.
Sounds good, brother. See you soon.
Take care.
Later. Cool.